Professional drone pilot Ronny was sent to the mountains of Tibet to capture footage. He expected nothing more than rugged peaks and endless snow. But during his final flight over a restricted area, he stumbled upon something extraordinary: 2 giant glass domes hidden in mountain craters. Curiosity pushed Ronny to fly his drone closer. Despite the dwindling battery, what he saw through the glass left him stunned. These domes were hiding something significant, and Ronny couldn't shake the feeling that their purpose was far more important and secretive than he could imagine. But why were these domes up here in the mountains? What were they covering, and why was Ronny not allowed to film in this area?
But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories.
Ronny has been flying drones professionally for over 10 years, but has been flying for fun for even longer. He works for movies, documentaries, and even sporting events. There have been so many good shots, but these will all be nothing compared to the discovery he is about to make high up in the Tibetan mountains. Ronny was used to going to some extreme locations to get footage, but going to the Tibetan mountains was a first for him. It would be a solo trip. He was told to get some footage of the mountaintops and snow that would be used in a documentary about wildlife in negative temperatures. But this wouldn't be easy. Although his drone was top-notch, state-of-the-art, Ronny was still unsure about accepting the job. It would require a lot of work in a very difficult environment. It would be at an incredible height and the cold would be below freezing. Would it be worth it to get these shots? There was only one way to find out. The only way to get to the filming area would be on foot. Climbing up through the snowy mountains of Tibet was not Ronny's idea of fun, and he was ready to reject the job. It would be on foot, mostly alone, and on limited supplies. But money wasn't in the equation yet, and it could make him change his mind, and it certainly did. The company was prepared to offer him so much money for these shots that he simply couldn't say no. Figuring that as long as he found a good guide up the mountain, he'd be okay. After all, it was just work being work. It was always difficult to get the perfect shot. This would just be a little more extreme. The first thing to do would be to find a guide, someone who would know the area well and could take him up the mountain on foot. This wouldn't be easy though. Most likely he'd have to find someone local, and the people around here weren't nice to outsiders. It took him 2 days before he could get anyone to talk to him. With 2 whole days missing from his trip, Ronny needed to hurry up and back down the mountain with the shots ready to send in order to deliver them on time. If he didn't get the footage sent within a week, the documentary would fall behind, and that would mean a pay cut to Ronny. Now that the local people were talking with him, Ronny was able to hire 2 Sherpas to guide him up the mountain. The Sherpa people are nomadic and knew the mountainside well. Even with their knowledge, the trip was difficult and cold. Ronny began to doubt if his equipment would even work in these conditions. The high wind was freezing and didn't let up for a day and a half. But with a bit of luck, Ronny and his guides reached the filming location. The weather even began to let up and Ronny was beginning to get hopeful again. If he could just get these shots quickly, he'd be back down the mountain in no time, but things were about to change. Ronny got to work preparing his drone. He talked with his guides and got some bad news. They knew the routes around here well because they were usually full of people. There were lots of flags along the routes and indicators of human life and interaction. This was exactly what Ronny didn't want. Given that this was a nature documentary, the mountains needed to be as free of human life as possible. It should look natural and clean. Having flags and possibly people in the shots wouldn't look good, and the company might not accept it. Luckily, Ronny's guides had an idea that would change the entire trip. There was a portion of the mountains that was off limits to the Sherpa people as well as any other outsider. This meant that those parts of the mountains were mainly untouched and natural. It would be perfect for the documentary, but there was a slight problem that could mean serious trouble. Given that this portion of the mountain was off limits, it was also forbidden for planes and helicopters to fly over it. This would also include drones, or it would. But given that drones were so new, they hadn't been specified in any laws yet. Technically, it wouldn't be breaking the law, but it was still a risk. Despite the risk, Ronny was going to go ahead with their plan. He'd done too much and had come so far not to try, especially since he'd spent so much time and money just to get here. He wasn't going to leave without getting what he came for, and it would be his stubbornness that would lead him to his discovery. Once they got to the edge of the restricted area, Ronny set up his drone and lifted it into the air. His guides were fascinated with his drone and watched him as he moved it around in the sky. Ronny talked to them and showed them how it worked, reminding himself as well. Things were going to plan. Ronny, now fully ready to send the drone up, steered the drone in the direction of the mountaintops, which were fully restricted. The drone was out of sight in 15 minutes, but Ronny could still see where he was going through the camera. It was time to start getting the footage that he came here for. Ronny brought the drone around the mountaintops and set it up in different positions. He started recording as he went through the difficult shots. This would be filming the steep mountainsides and some close-ups of falling snow. What he saw on the camera was incredible, and it was going to get even more so. With the weather cooperating, Ronny was able to get his most difficult shots. He then did some wide angles around the mountains, capturing different rocky points and snow mounds. He swooped the drone around and got shot after shot of snow, sky, and even sun. But this wasn't all he caught. There were some mountain goats living all the way up there, which resulted in some wonderful footage of wildlife in action. Unfortunately, those would be some of the last shots he'd get. The drone's battery was dying. It was time to wrap it up and get the drone back. Ronny could only get one more shot. The final shot was going to be grand. Ronny wanted to give a sweeping view of the mountains to show how big they really are and show the beauty as a whole. He turned the drone around and aimed, looking carefully through the camera. That's when he saw it and his jaw dropped. While he only expected to see the mountaintops and clouds, Ronny was given a completely different sight, something he never expected to see up here. At first, he thought he was seeing things, hallucinating in the high altitude, but that just couldn't be. So what did Ronny see? It looked like two giant glass domes stuck in the craters of the mountains. But what would these glass domes be doing here? What was their purpose, and more importantly, who had put them here? Ronny couldn't answer these questions, but maybe his guides could. After all, they knew the area and most things that happened here. After being stunned for nearly a minute, Ronny called his guides to explain what he saw on the monitor, but they were just as clueless. The mysterious domes captured Ronny's curiosity. He wanted a closer look but had to act quickly. His drone's battery was nearly out. Reluctantly, he flew the drone back just in time before it powered off. The mystery lingered. Determined to uncover the truth, Ronny decided to hike to the domes. His guides, however, resisted, warning that the area was forbidden. One of them, too fearful, returned to the camp while the other hesitantly agreed to join. Ronny's resolve outweighed the warnings as they crossed into the restricted zone, ignoring the no trespassing sign. The trek was grueling, with silence surrounding them and snow blanketing the ground. An hour later, they reached the mountain from the footage. The climb was steep, but with perseverance, they made it to the summit, where the domes finally came into view. The smaller dome, easier to access, drew their focus. As they approached, its size became more imposing. Ronny, eager to see what was inside, cleared snow from a large glass pane on the ground. Peering through, he struggled to make sense of the view. Below, it appeared to be plain soil, a strange, seemingly out-of-place garden in the snow. Ronny's curiosity surged, but the door was securely locked, with no visible way to break it open. Searching further, he found a scanner, but it was unresponsive, displaying a dead battery message. Undeterred, Ronny swapped in his drone's batteries, bringing the scanner to life. However, it turned out to be a high-security face scanner. They had no credentials, but Ronny decided to try his luck. To their amazement, the scanner accepted his face, and the door unlocked with a click. Behind the door was a narrow tunnel leading under the dome. At the end of the tunnel was another door, thankfully unlocked. Inside, Ronny and his guide discovered a sprawling underground facility. The temperature was controlled, and the space was stocked with supplies for long-term habitation. One room contained the soil field they had seen through the glass above. It was clear this was no ordinary place. While exploring, Ronny spotted a sign in the local language. The guide translated it: Presidential Doomsday Bunker. The purpose of the facility became evident. It was a secret shelter for the government's elite, designed to withstand catastrophic events. The stocked supplies, the soil for food, and the concealed location all pointed to a well-thought-out plan to preserve power and privilege during a disaster. Ronny realized they had stumbled upon something they were never meant to see. This bunker wasn't just a refuge. It symbolized the lengths governments went to protect themselves, while ordinary citizens remained in the dark. Feeling the weight of their discovery, Ronny and his guide agreed it was best to leave immediately. They carefully retraced their steps, resetting the door and removing the batteries from the scanner. Ronny replaced them in his drone and ensured no traces of their presence remained. The descent back to camp was tense, with Ronny hoping the snow would obscure their tracks. Once at the camp, Ronny deleted all footage of the domes and handed over the rest of the drone footage to his employer, keeping the secret safe. He knew the consequences of revealing such a discovery could be dire. This time, his curiosity had taken him too far, and he vowed never to let it get the best of him again.